Hello and welcome to the Jackcast, your Swansea City podcast. I'm Matt Barocco and I'm joined as ever by Stephen Carroll. Evening, Steve.
Evening.
Well, it's been a couple of weeks since we last recorded. We've just got the 4 games to talk about and a transfer deadline day. So there's a little bit to get our teeth into, Steve. We could go all the way back to the last time we spoke, which was just before the Southampton game at the Swansea.com. I think we went into this one realistic, thinking Southampton were the form team in the division. They seem to have not lost a game in about 60 or 70 games. That was actually a ridiculous number, but the actual figure escapes me. But it was a game we went into knowing we knew what to expect. Russell Martin coming back down. He's got the team clicking. The introduction of Colin Calderwood has been massive for them to shore them up defensively. And ultimately, it was a game where first half in particular, as good as they were, we were bad, and it really didn't make for a pretty spectacle from the home fans.
Yeah, it felt like a bit of a training session, really, didn't it, in the first half? I mean, Southampton had so many chances. I think we owed a lot to Carl Rushworth, that it was still, a respectable scoreline, really, at half-time, didn't we? But, Southampton completely dominated. You could tell, obviously, that they were a very good side, but it was just a bit disappointing, wasn't it, from our point of view, that we seemed to stand off them and let them play. And, I mean, if you do that against a good side, then it's fairly obvious what's going to happen, really. I mean, we managed to get a goal back, didn't we, after going 2 down early on? And then you're thinking, well, at half-time, to only be 1 goal behind is an incredible result, really, given how the game has gone. But the good old returning player curse had to strike, didn't it? And Flynn Downs scored a cracking goal, and that made the game safe then, really, didn't it? But I mean, I was actually expecting the second half for it to potentially get worse, but I was quite pleasantly surprised. I felt that we were better in the second half, and it's quite surprising, really, that we didn't manage to pull one back, wasn't it? Particularly the last 15 minutes or so. We had a lot of chances, didn't we? So quite a strange one, really, in terms of, I remember coming out to there not feeling, quite as downhearted as maybe you'd expect, given the way the game had gone, because, I felt we'd ended the stronger team. As much as we'd been bad, it did feel like we improved. So, nobody was expecting a result anyway. So, I think certainly the second half did leave me feeling a bit more encouraged, really. So, a strange game in that sense, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. And certainly something that I'd noticed, when I first noticed after the Southampton game, which was we do seem to come out with a bit between our teeth after half-time under Luke Williams. So those half-time team talks are having a positive effect, but a lot of the damage has already been done. As you mentioned there, 3-1 down to Southampton. Second half, had we managed, somehow we contrived not to manage not to score in that second half. Had we done so, there was a good 15-20 minute period, Steve, as you say, where we were dominant and we were banging on that door, not just knocking. And he thought, if one of these goes in, the stadium is rocking and Southampton are shaking. And you just wonder how that game would have gone. But as we found of late, it's finding that killer touch at the right time in front of goal, which is eluded us. But as I was saying, I mean, Luke Williams' first game, Morecambe, just after half-time, it seemed that we'd stepped it up a gear and took that away from them. Birmingham, with a better team, first half, second half, we stepped it up a gear and should have won that game. Obviously came away with a 2-2 draw. And we're talking about Southampton, but also we talk about Leicester in a little bit as well. The same sort of thing applied, where you just see in this little bit of a spurt of Swansea City after half-time. But we've got to address that first half of performance. We're going to have to quickly touch on the cup game in between as well, Steve, because I know you really wanted to do a pod directly after this game because you were so dejected and livid at the performance that you just thought we need to talk about it. I politely refused to talk about that game, but let's touch on it briefly now. 5-0 away at Bournemouth.
Yeah, I think the first half does have to rank as quite possibly one of the worst I've ever seen in my life. I mean, it was shocking, wasn't it? I mean, the amount of just silly mistakes. It felt like people were not giving their all, and just not working as hard as they should have been, and just general switching off, not paying enough attention. Yeah, what can you say, really? I don't think anybody associated that played in that game can hold their head high at all, really. I mean, it was a total embarrassment. And, I think the manager has to take some of the blame as well, because he did pick a strange team. I mean, playing Cullen on the left wing back, very odd. But also the fact that, in general, we're in mid-table. Surely like a nice little cup run wouldn't do any harm. So why not play the full team and just go for it? Instead he did that, and we were humiliated. And if we're being honest, it couldn't have been significantly worse. I didn't think we were hugely better in the second half, but I felt like the opposition really backed off. So yeah, you can blame everyone. Wood and Humphreys in particular, shocking.
5 shots on target, 5 goals.
Yes, don't worry, I was going to come to that. Fisher did not cost us the game, because I think by the time he'd made a mistake for the third, he passed it out. The game was already gone. But it's just the fact that with Fisher, as I've said so many times, as you said, 5 shots on target, 5 goals. When you're in a situation where someone's going to take a shot, you just think goal every time. That's the problem. Unless it hits him, you don't even think he'll save it. It's got to be, if it goes down the middle and hits him, it might not go in. But any reasonable shot is going in every time. And it's just, I don't know why he got picked for that game. I don't know why he ever gets picked, because you can't learn anything new. He will consistently let goals in. So, yeah, straightforward. But look, a night I think everyone would rather forget. And I do have a lot of sympathy, really, for those that travelled, because it was probably time off work for some of them, probably most of them, and they were not rewarded in the slightest. They did witness one of the worst halves I've ever seen in my life, really. I think if I was there, I would have been tempted to leave at half time, and that's not the type of thing I'd ever do usually. But I think it was that bad. So, yeah.
Well, there was no halftime spurt on this one, but I know what you say at halftime when you're going in 5-0 down and you've put in a performance like we did. I think you just think then about getting out of there without any silly suspensions or injuries. And as you say, Bournemouth could have pushed for 7, 8, 9, and God knows they'd have got them with Fisher in goals. So, and the defence playing up the way they were. So we can just be grateful that they didn't set a new British record for that. So we can write it off as an absolutely dreadful way to exit the cup. I know we don't have we have a terrible record at Bournemouth anyway. So even playing our full strength team would have been a big ask, the way they are our bogey team, one of our bogey teams. So, but the way they folded was embarrassing. So had to pick them up then. A few days later, the weird scheduling. When we were supposed to have the FA Cup game on the Saturday. Well, originally we were supposed to have Leicester on the Saturday. I suppose you want to talk about this, Steve. I'm not sure if we touched on the last podcast, but ruining 2 decent fixtures that fans could have gone to get that Bournemouth game on SLC on a Thursday night is a disgrace.
Yeah, we touched upon it previously, didn't we? And, you really shouldn't be able to move. We all accept games getting moved, but moving them from a Saturday to a Thursday isn't acceptable, in my opinion. I think that's nonsense. So, and the worst.
Both Bournemouth and Leicester would have been much better attended as well.
Yeah.
So it would have been much better spectacles for all involved had one of them been on a Saturday.
Yeah, I think the only issue was obviously with the Leicester game. Even if we could have played it on a Saturday, we couldn't have really, because Leicester was still in the cup. So, there was always that, but that Bournemouth game should have been played on the Saturday, or the Sunday, or even the Friday night. You can sort of live with those things, but there was no need to put that on a Thursday. I always think Mondays and Thursdays are your days where if it's moved to that, then you really are putting people out.
Yeah.
And you shouldn't really be allowed to do it, in my view. But look, it is what it is. There's not a lot we can do about it. But I'm not. I wasn't best pleased about it, but I'm sure S4C probably did have crap viewing figures, to be honest, certainly in the second half, because I could imagine quite a few people might have turned it off.
Yeah, and the ones who would have watched it wouldn't have got S4C as a channel selection. So, yes, so roll forward to next Tuesday when they travelled to the King Power to see us play Leicester. Again, another really difficult game. It's probably the most difficult game Leicester away in the league this season, Steve. And we started with an absolute calamity of playing a defensive line 10 yards inside our half. And Dewsbury Hall cuts through and has the whole of Leicester to run through and slot it in after 3 minutes. It's just an awful start.
Yeah, it is. I mean, we had a chance just before that, didn't we? And you're thinking, oh, okay, we could have been in front, but
I don't count it as a chance for the man who it fell to. It doesn't count.
Okay. Well, you know what I mean, anyway, don't you? But,
yeah, no, I get what you mean.
Yeah, but yeah, I think it was Dewsbury Hall, and I think when he was sort of through from the halfway line, you're just thinking straight away, oh my God, here we go again. And that's what happened, didn't it? But yeah, I mean, the worst thing you could ever do, obviously, is concede that early, especially against a good side. But we didn't play that badly in general, I didn't think. I mean, Leicester did have more chances. There was one sitter in particular, wasn't there, that should have been taken in the first half that wasn't, luckily for us. But, we sort of grew into the game, really, didn't we? And I felt that, in the second half, we were well in it until that penalty was given. So, yeah, it wasn't, it could have been worse. I mean, at 1-0, I'm really fearing the worst when it's happened that early, especially given the few days earlier what's happened at Bournemouth. You are thinking that, this could be a repeat year. You certainly wouldn't rule it out. But I actually felt we did all right in that game. And we're well in it until that penalty, which is a bit of a strange one, I think.
Let's talk about that because, again, coming back to the half-time theory here, that the first 20 minutes of that second half, we were well in it and we were pushing Leicester. And the fans were getting a bit uneasy. We were creating chances. We were getting shots away. We were pressing. And what I can only describe as a complete absence of brain. Bashir Humphreys just stands on the halfway line with a ball bouncing towards him and doesn't approach it and gets it nipped away. And 10 seconds later, Wood dives in. Very, very harsh from Keith Stroud, but the guy's an absolute bellend, so I expect nothing less. He's the worst ref in the EFL for me, and he's been held that mantle for some time. And that he could decide that was a definite foul from his angle is shocking, and even the replay suggests that he got it wrong. And your favourite man, Mike Dean, saying there's never a pen. So it just takes the game away from you. And one moment of madness from our defender and another terrible decision from the ref, and you've lost this game over.
Yeah, exactly. In those situations, you can't, if it's bad, it's a tough enough challenge anyway, isn't it, without having decisions like that go against you. I mean, it's a funny one, really, isn't it? Because I don't think he doesn't really take the ball, but he doesn't take the man either. So it's a strange one in general, isn't it, that? But, yeah, I didn't think it was pen, is how I saw it. But, yeah, I mean, as you've mentioned, Humphreys has given it away. He's been poor recently, hasn't he? We've got to admit that. I mean, at Birmingham, we highlighted a few mistakes that he'd made, and then obviously he was poor at Bournemouth and this game as well then. So not his going through a great period at the moment is Humphreys. And, obviously the penalty gets given, it's scored, and then pretty quickly after that, Leicester have scored again. And at that point, then you're just wishing for full time, really, aren't you? Because you just don't know how many they could end up getting. So I think the scoreline's probably harsh, isn't it? I think that's something I would say. But it's another game we've lost where we've conceded a few goals. Not great, but I suppose the way to look at it was that we've played the top two twice. It's out of the way. So obviously that has to be a good thing. And then obviously we're all looking ahead to the next game, which is Plymouth at home, and everyone's thinking, well, this is the one that we're going to win. And it's the Swans being the Swans with us playing a team that have not won away all season. Should all really have known, shouldn't we, what's likely to happen?
Well, they haven't got any former players playing for them, have they? Oh, yes, the sole goal scorer in the game. Of course, he's going to score. It was absolutely nailed on. Congratulations to all the Swans fans, and I'm sure there's thousands upon thousands of you that made a couple of quid on Saturday off betting Whittaker to score against us. Off a hat if you had him down for first goal scorer as well, because that was a popular one. Soon betting companies are simply not going to offer odds on former Swans players scoring against them. It is unbelievable. And what turned out to be a decent corner routine blocked off at the back post, I think, was Ollie Cooper, and and Whittaker's run across the ball for a fizz shot. He's taken it well, to be fair to him. Like 12 yards out, he's had to catch that clean because it was fizzed across. But how have we contrived to lose that game? I will never know. In terms of effort, I can't fault. In terms of chance creation, I can't fault. In terms of just general, the domination we showed there was only one team in that game for all but one moment, and yeah, we've managed to lose it, Steve, and we've only got ourselves to blame. And once again, we find ourselves not being able to stick the ball in the back of the net when it matters.
Yeah, I think, as you say, we've played well in the game. We were the better side without a doubt. Like loads of chances, as you said as well. And the thing that's let us down is the finishing. But I mean, I'm not going to get too annoyed about it. It is a bad result. It's certainly not what we needed. I think there was added pressure really on Saturday's game, I think, because of obviously the recent fixtures we've had and the ones to come obviously look quite challenging as well. So this was obviously, on paper, our best chance to pick up 3 points for a little while. So for us to then not do it is obviously does make the situation probably worse than it really is. But I think we've complained a lot this season, haven't we, about the performances and our general lack of direction. But I thought that was one of the best games that we've played all season, to be honest with you. I mean, there was plenty of chances. We had a lot of the ball. Just finishings let us down. And obviously that is a problem. But, I mean, in general, if we can carry on playing like that, we will win more games than we lose, I would have thought. So I'm not going to get too annoyed about it, because I saw a lot of things that suggested to me that, Luke Williams is making a difference. We are improving. But, sometimes you're just in a situation, aren't you, where the fixtures don't really help you. And that's sort of what's happened. And, you will have games through a season where you are the better side. You just, for whatever reason, you can't hit a barn door. I think it is a bit concerning that you do look at us a little bit and think, where are the goals coming from? I'm sure we'll come on to our transfer business, before we end the podcast. But, I think we've got to try and, not lose our heads here. That's the way that I'm looking at it. I know there's a lot of people panicking. And
am I allowed to lose it in a particular way just for 2 seconds, and then we can get back to sanity? Why is Jerry Yates still being picked? Like the game before, by the way, we didn't touch on Allen's consolation. Jerry Yates gets an assist for blocking a goal-bound effort. Like I want the dubious goals panel to go back and have a look at that. They shouldn't give him an assist for that. He's actually defending. It's unbelievable. The guy's missing chance after chance, week after week. You cannot, at this level, afford to spurn golden chances every week. And I think he could have got 5 or 6 under Luke Williams' reign already. And he's just missing them. And you mentioned about Williams' strange selection against Bournemouth, where he played Cullen as a wing-back. And Cullen's been played all over the pitch, apart from in the position he wants to play. And he gets a cameo to play up there against the last however long against Plymouth. And he hits the postage stamp from 20, 25 yards. Right at the top corner, it's the stanchion corner and crossbar and post. So showing that I haven't seen Yates hit a shot like that since he's joined in the summer, and the man's confidence is clearly on the floor, Steve, almost to the point now. Remember this conversation we had last year about Andy Fisher, and I said I'm sure at this point he doesn't even want to be selected. I'm thinking the same with Jerry Yates. Look at his body language; he's very languid, and that's part of him anyway, but he doesn't appear to me now to have the hunger and the desire. It feels like he's in a really bad place, and he needs to be taken out of that spotlight. What are we not seeing that three managers now have seen to say Cullen can't do it up there and the Ukrainian can't do it up there? Because surely at this point you've got to give one of them a chance.
I certainly would play Cullen, I think, from my point of view, because I just think he's more likely to score. I mean, you look at that chance in the first half, the one where the ball's come across the box and Yates has got on the end of it, but the keeper saved it. I mean,
he puts that away.
Yeah, you'd fancy Cullen to score that, wouldn't you? I mean, I don't think Yates did a huge amount wrong there. I'll give him his due. But at the end of the day, he hasn't scored, has he? Which is what we need him to do. So, yeah, I don't think his confidence is as low as Fisher's. I think Fisher was gone, to be honest. And unsurprisingly, given that it was every game. But and it's obviously it's worse for goalkeeper, isn't it? But look, yeah, I am surprised that Yates is getting picked at the moment. But I think should we have brought a striker in is a fair discussion as well. I mean,
yeah,
because we have struggled to score all season, haven't we? So,
but we've got 4 strikers, 4 or 5 strikers at the club. There needed to be a movement some way in which we couldn't just keep bringing strikers in until we find a good one. We need to start looking at the ones that aren't good enough and finding clubs for them to go to. And we've clearly failed in that mission.
Well, I think we tried to move Kukarevic out, didn't we? But that didn't pay off. So, what realistically, what can you do in there? We've made some bad signings and we can't shift people.
So you help me out here. Why is he not getting any minutes?
They clearly don't rate him. And again, you'd have to look at it and say
put him on the bench.
Have felt that way, haven't they?
I know, but why are they putting him on the bench? Just name an academy boy. Name someone who they.
Yeah, it does seem a bit pointless, doesn't it? In that sense, if you're never going to bring him on, then.
But if you would say, right, okay, what situation would Kukarevic come on in? I would say perhaps in a game where we were trailing, needing a goal late on, and we were dominant with the ball and getting lots of crosses in the box. Oh yeah, exactly like what was happening on Saturday. Like that was tailor-made. We were putting balls in the box left and centre for Cullen in the end.
Well, the thing is, we didn't really look like scoring, did we?
No.
There were chances, but I never really believed we'd score. So, like I said, I've had an issue all season, to be honest. I think I've said it on you before. We didn't do it so much the other day, I think, but sometimes a lot of crosses in the box, in the air. And I'm just thinking, well, where's our height? Like, it's not going to happen. I don't mind it from a corner, but in general, obviously, we don't really have a big centre forward. So when you're doing that, the chances of you scoring don't seem that high. But yeah, I could have seen the logic in him, coming on. I mean, he's on the bench. He's there to be used, isn't he? I mean, truth is, I think a lot of people don't have a massive opinion of him, but I do know that he's not rated particularly highly. And I think the fact that, Duff, Sheehan and now, Williams, plus the fact they were willing to allow him to go, I think if they could have reached an agreement, just says it all really about what they think about it.
I agree. It has to be. It has to be something there in the background. He's not training well enough, but just can't see what else it can be, because ultimately, and certain players must be playing out to their absolute skin Monday to Friday on the training pitch, because they get picked week after week. And then on come a Saturday, they let everyone down again. So you just feel like there's sometimes, as a football fan, you're only ever going to get a tiny portion of that picture, where you turn up on a Saturday to watch the Swans and you're thinking, why is the manager doing this? This does make no sense to me. But as you say, there's something in the background there where he is absolutely unrated, and just leave him out of the squad altogether. Then don't waste anyone's time. If you could take a plus point, and this is going to segue myself nicely into this, Steve, from Saturday's defeat, it was the introduction of our new signings, and one thing we've got is pace, something we've lacked for just about ever. I think since Dyer and Routledge.
Dan James, isn't it? Is the last one.
Yeah, no, that's true. Actually, Dan James. Again, Dan James gave us that 6 months of pure pleasure, wasn't it? But the time that we've waited for pace seems to have lasted an eternity, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. It's certainly something that we've needed, and I think Ronald had a good debut, to be fair, particularly in the first half. I think he did fade in the second, but I mean, it's early days. He's young. He's coming to a new country. Can't speak the language at all. So, I don't think he was ever really going to put in a 90-minute performance, but I did like what I saw. I think there was, he did get down the wing. He was giving us, just that outlet really as well, wasn't it? To stretch the opposition a bit more. There's a couple of good balls into the box. I think that his was one, wasn't it, for that Yates chance I was on about. So yeah, I think there was positives there, and that has to be a good thing. I think the other two, Sago Junior and I can't remember how to pronounce his name now. The Polish guy from Norwich. I think
I'll give you that.
Yeah, Placheta, is it?
Yeah, that's bread. Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, I think those two obviously didn't have as long, and I think they probably weren't as effective, really. But, I mean, it's early days, isn't it? But, you certainly feel like now there are, options there, and we can actually go back to playing with wide men. So, that has to be a good thing, really, doesn't it? So, yeah, I think, obviously, the jury is out in terms of how good they really are, isn't it? I mean, you'd have to say with Placheta that he's come from Norwich, who've just let him go for nothing and taken over the rest of his contract. I mean, which is until the end of the season. I mean, if we really thought he was that good, he'd have had a longer deal, didn't he? So I think that one feels like maybe we're throwing, a bit of a gamble at it. I mean, Sago from Arsenal, harder to tell, I would say, because I don't think he's had a loan spell anywhere else. So first time loan, at what his level's at, I guess we will soon find out. I think Ronald's a bit more encouraging because he's played in Brazil, played in Portugal, a little bit older, obviously, than Sago. So, yeah, I think that one's a good one. But we did need a striker, I think, didn't we? And we've not done that, so that isn't great. And the squad now is huge, isn't it? I mean, I know a couple of people went, but at the same time, it does feel like the squad size is still quite similar to what it was, and yeah, there's going to be a few people there just not really getting involved. So, yeah, I think not bringing in a striker, I mean, it could be something that haunts us, doesn't it, if we have more days like Saturday, but I'm hoping that doesn't happen.
I just think we got, at this current moment in time, we got the worst man up front to finish them. I wasn't confident he was going to score that one from Ronald, and, excuse me. And, yeah, like I said, a striker with a bit between his teeth puts that either side of the keeper, not straight down his throat. But on a positive note, I thought Ronald was man of the match. I thought he was outstanding. I really did. I was impressed. I was looking for it as well. I wasn't able to go on Saturday for personal reasons, but I was watching it and completely legally, of course. And saw the Ronald's movement, and quite a lot of the time he was making runs that we were just not picking up as well. So he was constantly offering himself, and he had the left back on toast plenty of times. He was just going, and quite a few times he was frustrated that the defenders were having the ball, taking a touch, taking an extra touch. Cabango was looking up and then not giving it, and you're thinking, with a pacey player, as soon as he makes his run, you've got to give it, and you've got to trust him that he's going to win that race. Otherwise, a defender comes across the cover and the moment's gone. We got to be quicker on the uptake. But even so, there was still plenty of moments there to get excited about. And one moment particular I liked about him as well was a crunching tackle he made after not receiving the ball and Plymouth coming away with it, and he chased back and flattened his guy over by the east stand. And I thought that's the other side to the game, which I guess when you look at him, you might think, oh, maybe the South American culture and stuff like that, maybe he won't have. Let's look at Jefferson Montero as a perfect comparison, Steve. He had the glitz and the glamour when the sun was on his back, but he wasn't up for a fight. And Ronald seemed to have a little bit more bite about him. I know it's very, very early days, but I'm optimistic with him.
Yeah, I think I feel the same way, really. Like I say, he gave us that extra outlet, didn't he? And that, you're right to highlight that challenge there, really, because it did show that he is willing to dig in for the team. So I think there's positive signs with him. So it does look like it could be a decent signing for us. I think the one good thing I like about it is that I feel like a lot of our business recently has been more like journeymen type people. Obviously, there's been a few loans and stuff, but I don't really feel like we've brought people in with any sort of resale value. I think that's a big problem. Whereas I look at Ronald, he's in a good age bracket, and he could be coming here sort of to put himself in the shop window, hoping to go, further up the pyramid potentially at some point. And I think that's that's the type of signing that I'm happy to take a punt on in terms of money. But when we're spending money, it's got to be on players that are ready to play now. I don't like this thing of Kukurevic, who spent about $2 million on him, and he's not getting picked at all. I mean, Jawa on the left back who's gone back to the Netherlands on loan. I mean, that was another one that cost a few $100,000, wasn't it? And we can't be buying people thinking, oh yeah, they might they might come off in a year or two. No. We're buying people, they've got to play now. I'm all for buying people that we think we can improve and sell on. That's the way to go. But if you think they're not ready for now, then, what situation are we going to be in further down the line, really? So
that's what baffled me. I know we discussed this a few weeks ago, Steve. The Kukurevic one was, you can't buy someone with our finances for £2 million and say, like, he might come good in 12 months' time. What a massive risk that is. And where's the end goal? I mean, if you're buying someone and they might come good in 12 months' time, you'd want that to be a couple of $100,000 most. And then you want to kind of, that's the measured risk. And if they come good and they become, a 3, 4, £5 million player, then wow, what a return on your outlay, and it was worth the risk, and well done, because the fortune favours the brave. But there's no calculated risk in spending £2 million on someone you already deem not to be good enough to play right now. Because if he had a good season, he would likely still only be worth the money we put on him at this point. So it was such a massive fuck up on the price we paid for a player they already didn't deem good enough.
Yeah, exactly. I don't get that at all. I think there needs to be serious discussions behind the scenes about what's gone on transfer-wise. In these two windows, I would say, because it is just ridiculous. I mean, the approach under Russell Martin was extremely the other way, but I actually think that a one-out, one-in policy is the sensible way to go, really. But the problem is that last January, it changed to basically Whittaker back from loan, which the manager didn't want, the player didn't want, and nobody benefited from, and then about 4 or 5 leaving. And you're just thinking, well, you've now put this manager down to the bare bones and stuff like that, and it's just not acceptable. But if they'd, for example, when Obafemi left and they brought a striker in, then that would have been obviously a move that we needed. We needed a wing back, for example. They didn't do it, but because we weren't asking for much. I think if they'd just done a couple of those things, then you're in a reasonable position, aren't you? But they wouldn't do it. Whereas now they've just put us in a situation where there's about 5 centre halves, there's 4 strikers. Whereas last year at the end of it, there was about 2 strikers, wasn't there? And I really don't understand why we decided to change tack completely the other way. And then we've wasted a fortune basically. And at some point, it's going to hurt us with financial fair play as well, really. So it's from my point of view, Watson should go. I think he wasn't what he says on the tin. I think he's blagged his way in here, in my opinion. He was at Luton, but he wasn't in charge of transfers there. And a lot of these transfers, from my point of view, were down to him and his strategy. And the fact that he said that, I think after the first window shut, that the Swansea way hadn't changed under Duff. And you're thinking, well, mate, if you really don't understand it in that case, then do you? So he's a bad fit for us. And of course, we haven't even discussed yet, have we, that little incident at Bournemouth where he was fraternising with someone that we would call the enemy in Nathan Jones. I mean, from my point of view, we should bugger off to Charlton with him.
Well, I was going to say that story might yet have a happy ending. We can pray that Swans have a reshuffle after spunking £9 million up the wall in the summer and having no return on. Might look to make some reshuffle, and then he goes back to, pal up with Nathan Jones at Charlton, and I think that would possibly be. This is interesting because, excuse me, a lot of focus, a lot of criticism has been on the Swansea City ownership since 2016, Steve. It has, and rightly so. It's been a long, drawn-out battle. There's been a lot of nastiness and ill feeling, and again, absolutely justified. Look at where we've fallen from and where we are now, circling the bottom three of the championship and losing assets year on year. I think that the current setup, I might get pelters for this, by the way, is the correct setup. It just has the wrong people. So I think the idea of having a Paul Watson here, someone who's going to take the focus away from the Americans and Jason Levian and Kaplan and whatever, and it's going to be, I'm going to negotiate them on the ground. But not just that, the chairman's going to be here with me. He's going to be living here. He's not going to be someone across the pond who we have to get across on deadline day. Things can't get done. But is it possible that we can keep this structure but just change the people in those roles? Because we managed to get a lot of work done in the summer. It was just, as it turns out, shit work.
Yeah, I mean, when we had Trevor Bircher calling the shots, I mean, I don't think there was anywhere near as much moaning then, was there? The communication was good. It wasn't always good news, but it was, we were being kept informed of everything. And ultimately, you did trust him to make the decisions that you felt that we needed to make, really. Whereas I think the problem with Coleman now is he's been doing some of these interviews, and I'm glad he's fronted up, but at the same time, he's he's talking about next summer and how the plans are in place and all this type of thing. It's
I don't think
but
that's a good idea.
The problem is, I think, as he said himself, judge what I do, not what I say. Yeah. And you think now people are just a bit alienated because they don't really like what we've done, and they're almost saying as if we will judge you on what you've done. Yeah, exactly. But also, he did say the other day, didn't he, that in an interview, it's I understand why the fans are annoyed, I would be as well. And you're thinking, Christ alive, don't say that, for God's sake. So if you're thinking that, so why are you almost sticking up for what's been going on? It's just a strange response. It's not. You're not going to win any fans by doing that, are you?
I think even more damning, that was in response to, had he heard of the criticisms of Paul Watson, and then he said, I'm aware, and I can understand fans being frustrated, and I would be too. What a damning indictment of Paul Watson there, because he's basically said, I know people are slagging off Paul Watson, and I get it.
Yeah, exactly. It's just baffling.
I think he'd be gone in the summer. Is that because
I think so? I suppose the other problem here is
that from the hierarchy.
Yeah, but there is still an issue here, isn't there? Of Coleman says he makes the decisions, but we don't know that for certain, do we? The fact is, there's loads of people involved there now. It's hard to tell who really is making the decisions. That's the truth of it, isn't it?
There is that, but you have to have, no matter where the money men are. Look at the old regime with Hugh Jenkins signing off on deals and stuff like that. But we know he wasn't the money man. That was the worst kept secret in Swansea. But you had, someone in the background who just had a couple of quid and was able to allow Hugh Jenkins to be the figurehead to make those decisions at boardroom level with, Lee Deneen and the other support and stuff. But he was the man who carried the can for it. And obviously took a lot of the plaudits as well. And rightly so at the time. But even though there are a lot of money men in the background now, Steve, you have to have someone there with the final say. And it has to be that kind of trusted role, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. And the problem is that if, let's say, we go through everybody who's involved, would you trust any of them to have the final say? That's the other problem, isn't it? They're just, we're talking Andy Coleman. I mean, he's inexperienced in football, isn't he? So I think I have cut some slack to a point, because I just think that the majority shareholders are the ones that have been there for so long, and you almost think, well, when somebody new comes in, you've got to give them, a reasonable amount of a chance. And I'm not saying he's even a particularly bad guy or anything, but I think now some of the comments that have been made and stuff, it just makes you think that, you can't really put your faith in him, unfortunately. It's just difficult, isn't it? I mean, you really want to give, these people your support and to hope that they're doing, the things that you want. I mean, Luke Williams did talk him up, didn't he, to be fair, and said that
he keeps talking.
He made a big beeline for him. So, I mean, that seems to be, you'd have to say that's a positive. But
then Luke Williams talks up Paul Watson a hell of a lot as well.
Yeah, that's not great. But I mean, I suppose the fact that with Williams, he did say that, or Williams did say about Coleman, didn't he, that he came to his house, spent time there and all that type of thing. And suppose if you do want a manager, that is, you're not really making the manager come to you then. You're going there and you're trying to, persuade them to take it. I suppose you have to say he's pulling out the stops there. But look, it's a difficult one, isn't it? I think that the big problem at the moment is that Watson has blagged his way in you. And, they're making decisions probably based on a lot of what he says. And he's just totally the wrong man for us. So, yeah, it's, I think what you always want in these situations is like when we had Trevor Birch. You want someone to come in here that's got like an understanding of football, don't you? Someone that's experienced, that's worked in it. Because the fact is, right, you can bring in the best business people in the world to, run clubs, people with a lot of money and stuff like that. We're seeing it at Chelsea at the moment, aren't we, where Todd Bowley has gone in there with all this money and thinking he's going to make things work. And, I mean, considering the amount of money they've spent, it's gone incredibly badly, hasn't it? They've got worse. And that just shows you can't really apply your normal business like acumen to football. It is a different ball game. It doesn't really work in the same way as a normal business does. But I think a lot of businessmen that haven't worked in it before think that it does work the same way. And then they usually find out quite quickly that it doesn't. So that's a problem. And I think ideally you just want someone running the club, wouldn't you, that does have experience of working in football. I mean, you'd have to say that Hugh Jenkins obviously was someone that was very good at it for.
Well, he learned on the job, but it's a lot easier in Division.
He did. I think the thing with Hugh, you'd have to say that initially there were mistakes made. I mean, I know it was a committee early on, wasn't it? But then, obviously the Nick Cusack situation where Brian Flynn should have had the job initially. They didn't do that. They gave it to Cusack. They backed him, made a lot of bad signings, and then Flynn had to correct it. Nearly sent us out of the league, of course, so that whole debacle, didn't it? But I do think they learned from it. And then, obviously, it was a good time to take over, really, in the sense of like a stadium was going to come at some point, and then you've got a bit of momentum then, and obviously more finances than you've had, and obviously the Martinez coming in sort of changed everything as well, then, didn't it? So, but as you said, they did have to learn. But I think the key thing there was as well that we're talking about people that had the club at heart, so they were obviously going to make decisions then that they really thought were for the best. Where these guys, it's probably more of just a job to them, isn't it, or like a business opportunity. So I think that's what the issue is.
There is an elephant in the room. Look, I didn't want us to do crazy business in January. I feel like, and obviously I'm less confident in this, but certainly towards the start and middle of January, I was feeling like we're not going to go down. I felt like this. And we're certainly not going to go up. So let's not throw good money at bad now. We've done that in the summer. Let's make sure that we're ready for the summer when players' contracts are expiring or they're going into their final year and you can get them at a cut price deal. January is a notoriously difficult month to do business in. We already knew we needed wingers desperately, and we found out that we definitely need a striker. But the elephant in the room is FFP, Steve. We spent a lot of money. We need to show that we're generating it, and we're going to struggle to. We're going to be flying, quite close to the flame here, and it might well dictate our transfer business. It might well have dictated our transfer business when it came to the January window.
Yeah, I think from my point of view, I was just looking and thinking we just need to bring in like essential players rather than bringing in, anybody for the sake of it, really, that's going to sit on the bench. I think that was my mentality really for the window, because the squad's so big, as I've previously said, and you're just thinking you don't really want people just coming in and sitting on the bench again. So I think I probably wouldn't have done all the business that we did, and maybe would have brought one of those players that came in, maybe wouldn't have come in, and I would have certainly tried to buy a striker. But the fact is, we do know that January is a difficult time to buy people. I know that's the excuse that we'll get trotted out, but to be fair, I don't think they're wrong on that. But FFP is going to hurt us, and I do think that, I know the weekend went badly. We lost QPR of one, and so we've had this field, so we are closer to the bottom now. But I do think really I would have tried to not do too much business on that basis of thinking we should be okay to stay up. So yeah, you wouldn't want to go doing business that could, harm you further down the road, really. So, but yeah, it's a tricky one, isn't it? Sometimes I think the problem is we're going to be paying the price, I think, for what happened, last summer for a little while now. Like I say, FFP is going to hurt us, and but also we've got to be realistic with finances. I mean, we've been making losses on occasions, even when we've managed to cash in on some of our assets. But where's the assets now? That's what I'm asking myself. Most people won't want our players. That's the simple truth of it, and that's the real damaging thing that has happened. So we're almost hoping that a couple of youngsters come through, and that will, lessen the burden. Or next summer, it's going to be vital that we can bring a couple of players in that, in a year or so. Then after that, maybe we will be able to sell on. So,
well, we got this new scouting network they keep talking about, don't they? Ultimately, you need the right man at the helm of that to whittle down to a short list and identify which players we're going to try and sign for the club. But Ronald is an example perhaps of that, Steve, where you'll have to look outside the box and look at someone that perhaps others aren't looking in corners that others aren't looking in, because so many markets are inflated and you're looking for a bargain now where 10 years ago you might have got one. Nowadays, it's finding a little bit more difficult to come by. I think Ronald was 7 figures himself, wasn't he?
Yeah, I mean, I think the one good thing is now that after Brexit, it was a lot harder to get work permits for people, but now I think you can have, up to 4 foreign players that don't need a work permit, so that's like an advantage. Although obviously Jawa and Kukarevic have been taken up with 2 of them, so maybe I wish it hadn't come in at this stage. But look, scouting's I think it's probably, again, if you are a scout, you probably either got it or you haven't. I mean, it's subjective, isn't it? But I mean, you'd always look at someone like Brian Flynn as a really good example, and the people that he's brought in here down the years when he was manager, now he's working as a scout. Now someone like that, you just look at their track record and suggest that this guy is a very good judge of a player. And I'm not saying you should hire him.
Kevin Reeves's black book as well, didn't he?
Yes, Kevin is another great one, So you've got to sometimes just find the right people and trust their judgment. It's as simple as that. I mean, I know Andy Scott, when he left, he pointed to Perot and Manning. So I'm assuming those 2 must have been 2 of his. But I mean, that doesn't mean that there weren't a few misses, shall we say. There probably were. But, you've got to trust the judgment of your scouts. That's the fact of it. And, you've got to make sure you've got people in there that know what they're doing and can spot a player and are realistic about if, they're players that we can sign. So
this is why I don't like going for data-based approach, because you're going on a player that is doing certain things, whatever, which is obviously going to hike up his price anyway, because he's already doing it. Whereas if you look at someone where we were in our absolute prime, Steve, we were famous for taking rough diamonds and polishing them.
Yeah.
We were taking people who were journeymen elsewhere, couldn't get a game. Wayne Routledge being a prime example, at about 20 clubs, couldn't get a game, find a home. And you bring him here, and he's found a home for 10 years. And other players like Nathan Dyer, players where we brought players in weren't necessarily doing it elsewhere. You don't look at the data and go, well, in fact, this player's making X amount of runs per game. This player's making X amount of successful passes. No, we want to find a player that's got the ability to achieve that in our system. And as you talk about, we want to polish those diamonds here, and that's how you generate revenue for the club, because the Perot would be a perfect example, hadn't scored and lit up much before. Famously, John Van Sweden said he would be worse than Aidan Newhouse because he hadn't done it before, because he just didn't rate him, and he's come here and blown everyone away. And that's the sort of thing. Obviously, everyone wants to unearth the next Joel Perot, right? But that's the target, not a data-led one where you look at players, what they're doing, and what facts and stats you can pull out from them. Because if they're already doing it, then that's not polishing, that's just buying someone ready-made.
Yeah, I think I don't have a problem with using data to help form an opinion and stuff like that. But as usual, it's just from my point of view, we've got to consider everything. I think I've said it on this podcast before. Whereas like the data isn't going to tell you if a player's a dickhead and will bring issues to the dressing room, for example. So we've got to bear everything in mind. You know what I mean? We talk about something like XG, and people will swear by that. And again, that's something that you can use to inform. But I mean, things are open to manipulation, aren't they? Like I was saying, with XG, you'd get a case of if a penalty gets saved and the rebound comes out and the guy has a shot from it, you're going to get 1 point something of an XG. Whereas in reality, you can only score one goal from it. So it's
as I said, Jerry Yates got an assist away at Leicester, and you think, well, that's a great assist. He got an assist against them.
Yeah.
He blocked a shot, but the facts will say it came off him last before Joe Allen tucked it in.
Yeah, exactly. It's these things can be manipulated. You've got to. I'd always say if you're going to sign somebody, you've got to watch them in person, haven't you? Because that will tell you far more. In the same way as like if you can watch a game on TV as much as you want, right? But I can tell you that nothing is a substitute for being there. It's great don't get me wrong, you get better angles on a lot of things, you get replays, right? But the TV's only focusing on the ball, really, isn't it? It's not focusing on other stuff. I remember a couple of times where I've been, like we go and watch Wales or something like that. I remember one game in particular, I think we had Slovakia away, and I remember thinking that Dan James had a poor game and wasn't doing enough, but people who were at home and watching on TV didn't agree with me. But I think I was trying to say was that quite often when we'd have the ball, you'd be looking for him to make a run or stretch the team, and he wasn't really like doing it. But something like that you can't pick up on as much.
Well, if the camera's not on him because he's not doing anything, people don't see that it's because he's not doing anything, and only the camera will focus on, as you say, the actual.
Well, a scout in general will go to a game, won't they? And they're not really watching the game; they're just watching a certain player or two that they might have their eye on. They're watching what they might be doing when they don't have the ball or when they're not involved, or anything like that, really. So it's I always think that you need to look at people and see what they're like in person. There's nothing wrong with using all the tools at your disposal to make a decision. That's what they're there for. But you can't just go on like, the data tells me this guy is good. You've got to go and have a look, surely.
Absolutely agree with you. And the XG comparison is a good one, because that's another thing that is heavily relied upon by some in football circles, and you just think, well, that tells part of the picture, and you can certainly use it to support an argument, but it can't be the foundation and the bedrock of it. It needs to just be part of a bigger picture, and that in the same way, I agree is when it comes to signing players using data, it can help support and it can help create a picture, but it can't be all you've got to work on. So we pretty much put the world to rights on Swansea's transfer business, Steve. Now, the big question about why we had to beat Plymouth, or why we thought we should have to beat Plymouth, was because the fixtures coming up were less than kind. I'm going to start this off with a positive and say, there's no denying the fixtures are tough looking ahead, but the performances we can particularly the performance against Plymouth, I can see us picking up a result in the next 3 or 4, maybe more than one, and that will give everyone in the fans base a massive boost. First up, though, it's Holloway. They seem to be a club hell-bent on forming search the playoffs, don't they, really? Because they've invested heavily, and ultimately they need to get in with a shout of promotion in the next 18 months, because they'll be running close to FFP themselves.
Yeah, it's a funny one, because I think Liam Rossini is a good manager, is doing a good job there. I wouldn't say there's been a huge amount of pressure on him, but now they've backed him quite a lot, and it does feel now as if he probably needs to get them into the playoffs, or potentially his job could be under threat, which would seem harsh, but I mean that sometimes is the price of if you get proper backing, the owner is expecting a return on it. So so there's a different type of pressure there, I think, on Hull now, but they've done some really good business, and Rory, the winger from Burnley, came in last week. Carvalho, obviously, which is a really good signing, did well at Fulham previously in this division a few years ago. So yeah, I'm quite surprised by Hull's approach. Obviously, Philogene is there, who's a good player as well, played against us earlier in the season. So this is a tough game, I think. If we get anything there, it'd be a good result. I do agree with you that I think we might spring a surprise in the next run of games, but I'm not sure it's going to be Saturday, if I'm honest. I think it's a particularly tough one.
No, they as you say, they're in a decent run of form, but also they've added to it as well. They've added to the quality. We discussed this when we started recording I think we discussed this right at the top of the season as well, where we said there seems to be everyone, ourselves included, that have thrown money at getting promoted this year. And last year was an absolute gimme of a league. Anyone could have taken it last season. We were talking about Coventry Luton being the bloody playoff final, We almost sneaked in and we had 3 wins in 23. It ridiculous that no one seemed to want it last season and now almost too many people want it.
Yeah, exactly. Strange, really, isn't it? I mean, last year, as you say, what was a weaker division? I mean, to have a Luton Coventry playoff final was a surprise, but quite refreshing, really. But I mean, we only finished 3 points off the playoffs, and we discussed last January earlier, obviously, and big missed opportunity. Nobody to blame but the owners, from my point of view. They were silly, and they paid a price for it, and unfortunately, they changed tack and now wasted a fortune. But I mean, we've spent a lot of money and not got better. I mean, this was really not a year to go for it, really, was it? Because you could tell it was going to be really difficult, and so it's been proven. But as you say, a lot of other clubs it feels like have spent a few quid as well. And but I mean, that top 4 have got away, really, haven't they? So a bit of a strange one. I mean, from Hull there, I mean, why didn't Hull invest a bit more? Last year could have been a good year to do it. I know they didn't start great, for example, so maybe that was part of it. But you'd even think next season, though, wouldn't you? I mean, it does look as if the bottom 3 in the Prem are going to be the 3 that came down. Went up last year.
Yeah, and the 3
they're not going to be as strong as they're not going to be as strong as the ones that are at the top now. I mean, either Leeds or Southampton are going to miss out on promotion, aren't they? At least automatic promotion.
Yeah.
And obviously they may well not win the playoffs either. So. But I mean, if you supported one of those 2 teams, I mean, as disappointed as you'd be, I'd be looking at next season then looking at who's coming down and being like, we'll get top 2 next year. And that's what I think would happen. So, I do think it'll be not as strong a division next year. It'll still be difficult for whoever it is, but you've got to think that the chances of somebody pushing into that top 6 will be a little bit easier than what we've got this year, because it does feel as if we've got one team that are walking it, who I'm expecting to break records unless they tail off at the end once the inevitable has happened. But also then you've got 3 teams that have got really high points totals, and I don't think you're going to see that next year. But as you've talked about Hull, and then we've got 2 of those teams coming up after that. Then, and we Leeds and Ipswich, so it's going to next week is going to be a tough week, isn't it? But look, the way we've got to look at it is, once we've got these games out of the way, it should get easier.
Yeah, it should. Weirdly, Leeds would be one I would think, we have a decent record against them. We always turn up. The atmosphere is always great. Leeds will obviously pack out whatever tickets we give them because they travel in great numbers. And it would be, you'd imagine, to be an exciting game. They have got a lot of former Swans players and Welsh players, and so between them both, they may as well be Welsh themselves now. But just they keep winning games, Steve. I mean, it's going to be a really tough ask, but I fancy that one. I mean, Ipswich, do people expect that they could have kept this up all season? They had a fantastic first half of the season, absolutely shocked everyone, blew everyone away, and slowly now the results are just dropping a little bit and not quite picking up the points per game that they were earlier on, and potentially they will may just fall into the middle of the playoffs where they are now and not really trouble the top 2 from there. Again, another one at home. I would target those 2. Of the 3 coming up next week, I would say those 2 home ones potentially as an opportunity for points, but still have to be absolutely at our best.
Yeah, I mean, I do think we've got a chance in those 2 home games. like I said, Leeds, I think there'll be a decent crowd for it. I think they'll be up for it. And obviously, what's always good about playing Leeds is that they'll bring a big following and they'll be up for it. So we've tended to have good games at them, haven't we? I know last time we played them at home was behind closed doors. We did lose. But in general, we're pretty good against them. We always think of that glorious 3-2 game in League One where the place was on fire, really. And we did manage to outclass them with 10 men. And then the year we went up, we beat them 3-0. But even then, the year we came down, the year after we came down, we'd had this young team at the start of the season. And, we were unlucky not to beat them then. We ended up drawing, didn't we? But I think that was at a time where, we were starting to maybe get a bit of love back for the team again after, not liking a lot of the players, should we say, when we got relegated. And these youngsters have come in and, gave us that bit of a boost again. So, we tend to go well against Leeds at home. So I think we've got a chance in that game. Leeds, his home record is marvellous, but away they have had a few defeats. So, it's going to be a difficult game. And I do think we can at least give them the game. We'll have to see how it goes. They are the favourites, obviously, but, we'll see. I mean, Ipswich, I think, have only had one win in the last 8, which is quite surprising. But they have faced Leicester twice and they faced Leeds in that time. So it might be, obviously, that's probably got something to do with it, isn't it? But, I mean, they lost to Preston the other day, 3-2. They were 3-0 down. Kiefer Moore came on and scored twice. Doesn't bode well, exactly. I could see him bullying us, if I'm honest. But, the fact is, it's probably the best time to play Ipswich all season, really, isn't it? Given that, that they did start incredibly well. They're a bit unlucky that there's a lot of other teams with them. I think in a lot of other seasons, they'd have a nice little gap there, even after this wobble that they've been on, really. So, but look, we've got a chance, I think, in those 2 games. I think, we'll see how we go. The fact is, after the way we played against Plymouth, we've got to be a little bit more optimistic about what's going on. And even if these results go badly, I mean, we're talking here, we would have played all of the top 4 twice. I bet there's hardly anybody in this division that can say that at the end of, when we're getting towards mid-February, really. So, that's how we've got to look at it, isn't it? So, let's not be too downhearted here. Let's not write games off either, because, I mean, the year that we went down from the Prem, we were all really miserable. And I remember Carvalhal coming in and we had a really hard fixture list coming up and you're just thinking, oh my God, we're going to get tortured. We're going to struggle to get much past 20 points. And then we've ended up turning over Liverpool somehow. And then the week after we turned over Arsenal. Now, I'm not saying we're going to get 6 points here, but that does just show you that in football, sometimes you don't know, like things can change.
Yeah.
And, you can sometimes just get a result from somewhere, maybe if you're not expecting it or anything like that. And look, we keep the faith. I think that's the underlying message here. If we create as many chances against either of those 2 teams, then surely we're going to take a couple.
Yeah. Well, you'd hope so, wouldn't you? You can't keep missing those gilt-edged chances. I'm going to say 2 to 3 points in these coming 3 games. What do you think? I'm
going to say 3. I think we might win 1 and
lose the rest.
Like the other 2. So, to be honest, I'll take that. That's, to get a win would be a big deal. Give us a bit of a lift in it. Hopefully, it'll be at home. I think that's the other thing. We haven't had much joy at home this season. I think when we look back on this season, you've got to say that there've not been many particular highlights of that. So, I think the best win we've had would have to be against West Brom, because a lot of the other sides we've beaten have been in the bottom half. So I think to beat someone good, particularly at home, give everyone that little bit of a lift would be great. And look, if we can beat Leeds, I think the season ticket renewal before it goes up in prices on the Friday. So I think it'd be a good time to maybe get a win there, get a bit of enthusiasm, and then you never know, 1 or 2 extra people might decide to take the plunge and renew. So that would be a good game to win, I think.
Well, the thing is as well, I drew comparisons when Luke Williams was appointed to when Roberto Martinez got the job, and we were looking about transforming the way the team played and getting them to play a very specific style. If we can survive this season in the Championship, and you did mention 5 minutes ago about the Championship probably being weaker next season just for virtue of the teams that are going to go up and be replaced by the teams that are coming down, then you could have what Martinez benefited from was a lovely run up to the summer. He got to see everyone firsthand, work with everyone firsthand, and then have a clear vision of what needed to happen. Albeit we had a lot more trustworthy owners in the structure system at the time, but it could be a blessing if we can. We got to make sure we survive. And again, you mentioned the Leeds game and even the Ipswich game after potential to just ease that pressure. And if we can get a little bit of momentum and finish the season strongly, because the fixtures do ease, Steve, right at the end. You know, when you're talking about April time, we've got winnable games around teams around by us then. So that'll be the time where we could really just push ourselves to safety. And it could make all the difference coming into next season, or even coming into the transfer business. If you can convince the powers that be they're actually we're on a good stead, then trusting and investing in the right way in the club, because it does need that again, doesn't it? Because the squad is bloated, but not with the right personnel.
Yeah, I think the only fear I've really got at the moment is, if the next few games do go as what you would expect, and there's defeats, so there's certainly no wins, then if the heads do drop, then obviously you could have a problem. But I mean, as you say, the fixture list does ease. But again, you could be in a situation if you're on a bad run, there would potentially be 6-pointers in there, and you would have to get results in them. But look, I think we're a long way off, worrying particularly much. I certainly think that we'll get this next month or so out of the way. Then we've got some better games then in March. Obviously, we've got a South Wales derby, which we certainly need to do better in than what we did in September, because that was a shocker. And I think when we get to after that game, I think there'll be about 8 games left. We'll still have to play all the bottom 4.
Yeah.
So I think that's when really we'll be in a situation to maybe assess what's going on, really. But you'd like to think that we can, by that point, get to a stage where we don't need a huge amount of points to guarantee safety. And then you'd like to think with an easier run of fixtures on paper that we'd have it'd be a decent chance for the manager to build some momentum towards next season. So I think that's how we're going to look at it.
Is that? I was going to ask you if you're a positive sign off, but is that it, or have you got something else in mind?
No, it has to be that. I mean, literally, after that Sunderland game on the 24th of February, we have played the top 8 twice. Now that is nuts, isn't it? Yeah. And I think we've got to play 5 of the bottom 8 at home. Now our home record is not great. We've got to play 5 of them at home. Now, literally, if with about 12 games to go, or whatever it is, you were going to handpick more or less fixtures or whatever. Yeah. It would be very close to that, wouldn't it? But to not play anywhere, I know that top 8 can change slightly. Maybe it will, right? But in general, it's going to be all of the top 6, I would have thought, and then probably 8 of the top 10 or something. So that's the situation that we're in. And you even think then, right? I think Cardiff are the top half. We'd have played them by the end of March, and stuff like that. So, look, we've got to. That's how we've got to look at it. There's no point losing your mind at this stage. I mean, you swear with some people that 5 points outside the bottom 3 and we're going down. And you think, please, people, chill out. Like, this certainly isn't the time to lose our edge here. I mean, if we'd lost 1-0 the weekend and played appallingly, I'd be considerably more worried, but that's not the case. So, look, we do not need to panic. Frustration and hurt, as always, when things are not going great, but we don't need to panic. I think the players need our support at the moment. They'll be a bit low on confidence, but I've seen positive signs, and the manager needs some back, and he's inherited a mess. And let's give our back, and then let's just see how things play out for now. But like you said, I do think we're capable of getting, pulling a bit of a rabbit out of the hat. I mean, we haven't talked about Sunderland which is the week after the Ipswich game, because I'm sure we'll reconvene into a pod in that time. But I do think we may well win one of the next 4 games. And that's how I'm going to look at it. I might be completely wrong, and if I am, then obviously it's not great, and the pressure will build a little bit. But we still have to remember that in terms of the way the fixture list has panned out, we will be in a better position after that in terms of what's to come, at least. So there's my positives for you.
There we go. Keep the faith. And like I said, even if the next couple of fixtures do go badly, the end of the season gives us, as Steve said there, what opportunity. The fate will certainly be in our hands to decide our own destiny there. So, but again, it's very early to say that, and we might well find ourselves, as me and Steve predicted, picking up a couple of shock results in the next couple of weeks, and then everyone can breathe a bit of a sigh of relief and get on with our lives. Thanks so much for listening to this podcast, and it's been a bit of a lengthy one, so if you're still with us, thank you for that. We will be back next week to preview.
Well, I was going to say, I'm not sure we will we? Because if you think that Leeds game is on the Tuesday.
Oh, not next week. Sorry, we just talked about
that. I think more likely the week after, isn't it?
Yeah, the week after. Yeah, everyone, listeners knew what I meant. I was just muddling my words up. The week after next, after these 3 games pass, and we can then talk about what we've seen and what we're about to see and how we think things are going to go ahead for the Swans. But for myself and Steve, thank you so much for listening. Bye-bye.